Hello and welcome. My name is Edward Henry. I am the National Ecologist with NRCS in Washington, D.C. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to be sharing with you the monitoring and pollinators and our needs and efforts in NRCS. We're going to have a little bit of an overview and also get into some of the specifics of what kind of monitoring NRCS is looking for and how we hope to be able to accomplish that monitoring and how that monitoring does circle back and becomes part of what we do as an agency in the future. You can reach me at edward.henry@usda.gov, and I welcome any questions or feedback that you may have. So why is NRCS interested in monitoring pollinators and their habitat? And really, it's about telling the story about how our pollinator habitat work benefits pollinators and what we're getting for the $1.5 billion of EQIP and other funds that the agency is putting on the ground each year. And of course, monitoring pollinators and our conservation efforts in terms of pollinators really starts with food production. 3/4 of our food crops depend on pollinators, and a little over a third of our agricultural land depends on pollinators. That's thousands of species, and many of our food crops, as we've mentioned, depend on pollinator services. They also have ecosystem services, and they're an important and even essential part of the life cycles of many plants, and the insects themselves have a codependency that has evolved over millions of years. We're very concerned because populations of pollinators, both native pollinators and honeybee pollinator populations, are going down. And addressing the causes and improving the habitat is really important for us and part of our agency mission of helping people help the land. So in NRCS, a lot of our monitoring efforts really boil down to our step 9, evaluating the plant. NRCS has a 9-step approach to conservation planning and putting conservation on the land. And by evaluating the plan and monitoring the work that we've done, it helps us to refine and improve our efforts going forward. We really are a science-based agency, and then we use that science to create the management that we put on the ground in terms of our conservation plans and our contracts that we enter into with the private sector on America's working lands. The refinement of our conservation standards that can result from monitoring is really important to us. And a lot of the information that we get in terms of what species are using our conservation systems, how our seed mixes are working, is very important to us and relates to the monitoring efforts that we see. We also really are able to inform our conservation farm bill programs, such as EQIP and CSP, the Conservation Stewardship Program that we're putting on the land. We also share this information through technical training to staffs, partners, and producers. So the monitoring results of farm bill programs that help pollinators is really important to us, and we work throughout the country. We are doing a tremendous amount of work on many of our alphabet soup of programs that come from the Farm Bill. That includes EQIP and CSP, CRP that we do in conjunction with the Farm Service Agency, RCPP, as well as Working Lands for Wildlife. And together, these programs really help enhance and preserve and conserve pollinator habitat on millions of acres throughout the country. So working with our producers on their lands, it benefits pollinators. But what do we monitor? How do we decide what to monitor and what to look at? And we really start with our conservation practices: hedgerow enhancements, cover crops, conservation crop rotation, field borders, windbreaks, wildlife plantings, and many others that we use to do site preparation, to do the plantings, to have the plants grow, to maintain them, and bring in the pollinators and attract them that are essential for agricultural success. So some of the questions that we need to answer and we look to answer on local sites include these local sites impacts. the economic viability of the conservation systems that we're doing, the lifespans of practices. Are we doing them in the right amount of time? Are we renewing them on the right cycle? Also, the use by pollinators themselves. Who's using them? The specialists versus the generalists. So, where to monitor? And NRCS has worked with many partners to plan and implement conservation efforts for pollinators. And we also get some of our monitoring efforts working with them, other USDA agencies, state and local governments, soil and water conservation districts. All these are huge and important partners to us, but we can't forget the private sector organizations, XERCES and Pollinator Partnership, the Keystone Collaborative, NAPSI, and so many others that we work with on a regular basis. Audubon is another example. We also work with academia, universities throughout the country, cooperative extensions throughout the country, and our own USDA NRCS plant material centers and our plant material specialists. They have extensive pollinator plant information. Much of that rolls up in our plants database to help inform the decisions for us, our partners, and the producers we work with. But we want to make sure that we get it right. And by doing monitoring and evaluating the work that we're due, we are able to improve those efforts for the future. So, what are our monitoring needs, and what is it that we're looking at? We're really looking at the difference in response in native pollinators versus livestock pollinators, honeybees versus sweat bees, and other native pollinators. Monarchs as a focus species is another great example of things that we want to monitor. How successful are we in the plantings that we do, whether it be milkweed or cover crops or a field border? Who's using them and what's happening? And we cannot forget non-insect pollinators, especially in tropical environments in Hawaii, in Guam, in Puerto Rico, where insects are not the only and sometimes not even the main pollinators for the agronomic and ecological systems that we're working with. So what is the effectiveness of the short and long-term standards that we use, our conservation standards? What's happening over 1 and 2 years, over 5 years, over 10 years? Are we looking at it in the right lifespans? And how does that affect our conservation standards that we do? So we really want to look at what is actually there. And plant ID, for example, is really important. We need to monitor. Are we sure that we've captured the right plants, the right species, the right cultivars of those plants, and how that's impacting what's going on? Also looking at different areas, farms, fields, range, and in today's world, urban is so important in what we're doing, in looking at how are we producing food in our urban environments, and what is the role that pollinators are playing there, and are we successful at attracting those that are there and taking advantage of their pollinator services? Also, the effectiveness of specific pollinators. Sometimes it's not generalists, it's the specialized pollinators that we're really trying to manage for. And are we doing the right thing for them as well? And their role as both natural and agricultural vectors. So, what are some of the specific needs that we have in NRCS, and what are we doing? Well, some examples are conservation mixes and the best response from local pollinator populations, the site impacts, the weather, the soils, the physical geography, the slope and aspect, the site conditions. Are they wetlands? Are they dry? And how is that affecting what's going on as well? Also, we need to look to the future. How will climate change impact pollinator populations? What we have today may be 150 miles north or east or west based on both climate temperature change as well as precipitation changes. And how are we prepared to make sure that the pollinator insect populations, bird populations, and bat and other populations, are we preparing the right habitats for them? Also, again, sharing this through technical training to our staff, our partners, and our producers so that they too are prepared for the future is really important. So in NRCS, the standardization, we talked about the mix of locally led conservation, but we also have national responsibilities. And standardization is one of those things, conservation practice standards. And looking at those 9 steps of planning and bringing it back to what is it that we're measuring? And is it consistent across the nation? How is it being measured? Who's doing that measuring? The need for controls versus what we're doing. What's happening in areas where we're not making changes or in native areas? And how are our conservation systems having an effect on the landscape? Also looking for consistency across states and agencies. Are different approaches creating different results? We need to be statistically based. because we need to be able to stand on the work that we're doing scientifically. And then getting our story out there and building on previous efforts and successes. So those are the things that we're really looking for in an NRCS monitoring program, and working with our partners to see what's being done on the landscape. So with that, I want to say thank you for your time and for listening. And again, you can reach out to me, Edward Henry, at edwardhenry@usda.gov, and I'm more than happy to take any feedback. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day.